One of the things that struck out at me was that National Treasury said it will increase, I think, about 5 percentage points, the prudential limits on offshore investments by institutional investors. Will there be a big outflow because of this? What does it mean?
I think it's a positive development because if you look at the extensive research that's been done on the optimal asset allocation that a South African investor needs to have in terms of offshore, that's been at 30%. So moving the prudential investment guidelines from 25% to 30% now allows the South African investor to be at that optimal offshore allocation. I think obviously the strong rand is a positive now in terms of taking assets offshore. But if you look at most South African investors, the big move has largely been done. So I think the impact now in terms of outflows should be more marginal, basically. But I think, overall it's a positive. You have a stronger rand, you have greater capacity to go offshore. So for the South African investor, it is definitely a welcome development.
A question for you from one of our viewers. Surely the increase in the allowable offshore allocation for retirement funding from 25 to 30, coupled with the current relatively strong rand, will result in fairly rapid offshoring of retirement savings in South Africa, with a consequent negative impact on the local indexes.
I think if you look at the global backdrop at the moment, it's largely positive for emerging markets. And South Africa definitely participate and will participate in that. If you look at 2017, South Africa did not capture a lot of the emerging market portfolio flow. In fact, from an equity perspective, I think we went negative. So in the current environment, when you take into the positive global backdrop, specifically for emerging markets, it's very difficult to call that there's going to be an immediate rush to go offshore, because the current environment favors emerging markets and South Africa always participates. And therefore there is, in the current environment, a bias to strengthening from a currency perspective and favoring emerging markets if you look at from a global investor perspective. So it's difficult to call. It's a tough balancing act at the moment. But I think in the short term, there might just be a bias to continued strength for the South African currency.